Huh? No. What? What is this? Huh? Oh, come on! There's a mirror image tab! But now the writing's backwards. Hello and welcome back to the Thriftington Post. My name is Lantis and this is episode 4, A New Hope. Today's episode is about the Elder Scrolls Online, an upcoming MMO which I'm just now starting to get excited about. I wasn't terribly excited about it at first because I heard it and I'm like, oh, okay, so Skyrim was super popular, so naturally they'll make an MMO about it. That's what everyone's doing this day. There's even a Dragon Ball Z MMO. I was surprised to see that, but became disinterested in it whenever I realized you couldn't play as a Saiyan. They were going to make a Mega Man MMO, just that got canceled. Actually, the DBZ MMO might have gotten canceled too. But either way, there are a lot of MMOs these days, and one more, just throwing one more out there doesn't automatically excite me anymore like it used to. I mean, in the past, when MMOs were kind of sort of a new thing. I mean, they've been out for a while, but whenever they really started churning them out for a while, I was getting excited with every new one and disappointed with every new one that came out, to the point in which I decided, you know, I'm just not going to start getting my hopes up, because getting your hopes up is the best way to get them dashed. That's actually a very pessimistic worldview, and what was it? Homer Simpson once said, aim low, boy, aim so low that if you miss, no one will care. That's actually a terrible way to look at things. So I'm glad that my hopes are up again, because hopefully I have the chance to get them dashed again, right? Well, anyway, speaking of hopes being dashed and people not getting their hopes up about it, the main complaint I'm seeing about the Elder Scrolls Online on the forums is that people are worried that it's not really going to feel like an Elder Scrolls game. And a quick disclaimer here, I am not a long-time fan of the Elder Scrolls series. I only started playing when Skyrim came out, so the only thing I know about the Elder Scrolls universe before this MMO is that a town square can hold a surprising number of cheese wheels. So, kind of a novice to this whole thing, but so the idea of you being a lone hero who's tasked with saving the world and you're the only one that can do it is a running theme in all the Elder Scrolls games. And longtime fans of the series are thinking, well, now that it's an MMO, you're going to be trying to sort of RP as this guy who has to save the planet, and it's very important that you save the planet. You're the only one that can do it, just like every other person in the town square around you. It's very hard to feel like you're one in a million instead of one of a million. And this could be a problem, because if you break the atmosphere of the game, then you're just left with gameplay, and no gamer wants to actually deal with that, right? So the people that made this game are, what are they? ZeniMax Studios have come out and said, you know, don't worry, this will feel like an Elder Scroll game. Most of the game is soloable, so you'll still feel like you're playing Skyrim. You'll still be going around doing your thing, killing monsters, exploring. You'll still be able to feel really strong, because you can go around and do pretty much everything solo except for dungeons. And that... But really, being able to do everything solo up to endgame is kind of standard practice for most MMOs. People that have played MMOs for a long time know that you do solo for most of the game up until endgame, and then you have to start getting into group activities. And if you want to do dungeons along the way, you need other people to help you with that. Now, yeah, way back in the day, like with Final Fantasy XI, you had to have other people, or you couldn't step outside of town without being mauled to death by a rabbit. I mean, that game was really terrible about requiring you to have groups for everything. And so their message of don't worry, you can solo for most of the game sounds like not something that they're telling to people who play MMOs. They're just sort of informing people that are longtime fans of the Elder Scrolls series that you'll be able to solo, just letting them know what people who play MMOs already know, that there's a great deal of solo content. But speaking of the dungeons, they're doing some interesting things with dungeons that I'm not entirely sure that I like, because the dungeons are non-instanced. Anyone can run in there and you can all be doing them at the same time. Well, actually, first of all, I'd like to go back to the solo hero thing, because this is I still have something to say along that venue. They are making it so that there are story elements that you have to make decisions whenever you meet an NPC. They'll give you a choice. It's like, well, do you save this person? Do you kill them? Do you do whatever? And unlike in SWTOR, if you're in a group, everyone in the group gets to make their own decision about where this story progresses to. So, I can kill someone else can save them, or vice versa. And this is neat because, I didn't really like it too much in SWTOR if I'm trying to save everyone and my friends are trying to kill everyone, or if vice versa happened, just, whatever I was in the mood to do that day. But, you could only see one storyline based on what everyone else wanted to do. However, in SWTOR, because you could only have one group decision, that decision ended up mattering. Like, the very first dungeon in SWTOR, you could go through 2 entirely different dungeons for the second half of it, depending on how you handled the Admiral and the one room that you all come to. So that's neat. If the decision matters, if it affects where you're going in the dungeon, but for everyone to be able to have their own outcomes, then that means that the decisions would have to not matter, right? Because you can't be in a group of 4 people, hit a decision, and then all 4 of you go your separate ways. Otherwise, you're just not really in a group anymore. And to keep everyone together, it has to just not matter if you let someone live or not, if you decided to blow something up or not. It has to be irrelevant to the story moving forward, or the gameplay moving forward, and so decisions become considerably less interesting whenever you take that into account. So, I don't know. Maybe they'll be able to do something really clever with phasing, so even though gameplay-wise the same monsters are coming at us, the surroundings look completely different, but then you're still doing the same thing. So interesting use of phasing could still make this be a little more interesting, but still have no effect on gameplay, so uninteresting on one hand, interesting on the other. I don't know. But moving on, dungeons. Speaking of group activities, in dungeons, they're going to be open world. There will be no instance dungeons. Everyone can just pile in there and go about killing everything that they see. Every group that enters a dungeon will, I suppose, have to compete over the bosses. And this could be interesting. On one hand, it would be interesting to see just like 50, 100 people running through a dungeon, just beating up everything that moved. On the other hand, that's only going to happen, most likely, for the first month or so that the game is out. After the first month, dungeons become a ghost town. It's like with Guild Wars 2. One of the main draws of that I was hearing about is dynamic events. Oh, dynamic events are so fun. Something just starts happening and you go and you take care of that, and there's other people around and they all get involved too. But I started playing Guild Wars 2 about a year after it had come out, so I wasn't playing at launch. Because I wasn't playing Guild Wars 2 at launch, dynamic events to me ended up being, okay, occasionally this thing starts happening and I can't visit this town at all. And that's it. Like, I want to go to this town, it's overtaken by monsters, and they respawn so fast that I stand no chance at all of clearing the town out and freeing the people and making the town usable. So dynamic events ended up being kind of crummy as far as I was concerned, because I was usually in the zones by myself at that point, and no one else was coming up leveling alts or anything. And maybe Elder Scrolls Online will be able to handle this with their mega server idea, which, actually, funny thing there, whenever you first start to play Elder Scrolls Online, instead of you being matched with people who also thought that server's name sounded cool, instead you'll be given a survey to see what you like, what you don't like, and depending on your choices, you'll be grouped with similarly minded individuals. And then the mega serve, and then once you're with people who you can like and hang out with and it's all cool, the mega server comes in and just dumps everyone back on top of you. So that is kind of an amusing thought to me. But where was I? Okay, let's see. There were dungeons and people were in them. Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought there. But open world dungeons, that should be interesting. And the game's supposed to be able to handle 200 people loaded on the screen at once for like epic sieges and stuff, so it should be interesting to see 200 people in a dungeon all competing over the last boss, because groups are 4 people. So, 4 people at a time, those 200 people will try and get the claim and kill on the last boss. Could be interesting. But, I mean, at the same time, while it's fun for everything to be super easy and you're hack and slashing through everything, that's also kind of unfun if you're looking for any sort of challenge at all. Because, I mean, World of Warcraft tried to have outdoor events with, like, Undasta, a world boss who is supposed to be really strong and require, like, a group of heroic geared... Well, people kept saying heroic geared, 25-player group, but if you're heroic geared, it doesn't drop... Undasta himself didn't drop heroic gear, so that was... I always thought that was odd. But point being, Undasta, really strong, not supposed to be able to zerg him, so people zerged him anyway. They would just bring like 400 people to him and graveyard zerg him until he fell over and died. So that's what's going to happen. If Elder Scrolls tries to have a difficult dungeon, people are just going to flood in there with such high numbers that nothing could possibly be a challenge. They're going to get what they want and then be gone. And then a few months later, one lone guy who just picked up a new copy of the game is going to wander in there, be destroyed, find no one that wants to run it with them, and just sort of go about his business thinking, I bet that place would have been really fun if anyone else was here. But I don't know. The dungeons do scale, though, so he does have this guy in question would have the option of finding some higher level people and getting them there. Though I know that they scale from 15 to 50, but I don't know if like a level 15 player can group this a level 50 actually. I don't know, but we'll see when it comes out, or if I can get into beta. We'll see at some point. The last thing I want to talk about is the finesse system, which also amuses me. It's a real oddity because it kind of encourages people to do the opposite of what other MMOs I've played have. In other MMOs, generally, if I'm just leveling, then it doesn't matter how I attack mobs, how I go about doing the combat system for that game. I can just hit whatever buttons, things die, and I move on. But whenever I get to a group, that's whenever I want to, manage my DPS rotation just right. Well, if I'm DPSing in the group. So, not much attention to soloing, attention to grouping. In Elder Scrolls Online, on the other hand, you have the finesse system, which whenever you're solo, it's... How do I put this? There's a way that you fight monsters so that, like, you're doing your normal attacks, and then that monster goes to do something, and you interrupt it, and then you do your finishing move, and it dies, and you get the finesse bonus, which is, like, extra loot and bonus XP. So whenever you're solo, you're encouraged to do the fights in a certain way. But if you group up, no one can do finesse. Everyone interrupts each other's finesse because the monster has to be hit in a certain way for it to count, and the other person can just whack it with an auto attack when you're in the... or game doesn't have auto attack, I don't think. The other person can just whack it with the normal attack whenever you're about to do your finisher, and that will just break your finesse bar. So you can't get finesse points in a group. So what ends up happening is everyone just dog piles onto the thing, beats it down, and you get bonus XP because you're in a group. So solo gameplay, you have to pay attention to how you're fighting. Group gameplay is just sort of mindless hack and slash. And I don't know. I don't see that as a negative thing so much as I find it interesting. Well, that's it for the show. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can leave a comment below, or you can contact me on Twitter at Lantis Armstrong. That's LantisArmstrong. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.